famous line from Tata Steel is that we also produce steel. So one of the biggest attractions of IIT Madras is the campus itself. It's probably one of the best campuses in the country, and dare I say, I mean, one of the best in terms of its sheer natural beauty, one of the best in the world. It's an absolute green lung and a wildlife sanctuary right in the midst of a city. It's unbelievable. And it's about a 650-acre campus. We have about 16 departments. I'll tell a little bit about IIT Madras, then I'll talk about biotech department. Okay, so IIT Madras has about right now 650 faculty and about 11,000 students. Most of them are residential, and out of those 11,000 students, I think about 3,000 are PhD students and 3,000 undergraduate and about 3,000 master's students. So roughly equal distribution. Okay, 3 to 4,000. And this is spread across 16 departments, of which biotech is probably the youngest department. Okay, so it's a very well-established institute. It's been there for the last 60 years, 63 years now. Started in 1959, and as I said, it's ranked number one in the country as an overall ranking number one for the last 4 years in a row. Ever since the ranking process started, it's been ranked number one, and number one in the engineering field for the last 7 years, right, in a row. So ranking and numbers apart, it's really grown into a huge institute, and it's grown multidimensionally. When I joined, there were about 330 faculty. Now the faculty numbers have doubled in 20 years. Okay. Other than that, it's established the biggest university research park in the country. I'll talk about that later, which is really the envy of all other IITs, and everybody's trying to emulate that. It's started, online programs like the NPTEL program and the online program, which gives a bachelor's degree in data sciences. That's the most recent thing, and so on. So it's really got substantial sponsored research funding, perhaps the highest in the country, almost on par with IISc. I think IISc gets about 525 crores. We get about close to 500 crores, far higher than any other IIT, right? So all these things are some pictures for IIT Madras itself. The Department of Biotechnology, as I said, started in 2004, and it's called as the Bhupat and Jyoti Mehta School of Biosciences in a way, because this Mehta Family Foundation, which is based in the US, gave the initial funding to set up the buildings. There are 2 such buildings, right? The total area of about 60,000 square feet, which includes lab space, common research facilities, office spaces, and so on. And the department has very strong teaching and research programs, both of which are highly interdisciplinary. So we have currently 34 full-time faculty members and more than 600 students, right? About half the students are undergraduate students in the 2 5-year dual degree programs. We offer 2 integrated master's programs. These are called dual degree because they offer either a BTech and an MTech in biological engineering, and the other one is a BS and MS in biological sciences. Okay, each with an intake of about 45 per year. Other than that, we have about 230 PhD students. So roughly about 7 plus students per faculty member, okay, which is the highest in the institute. We also have an MTech program. We used to have 2 MTech programs, one in clinical engineering, but now that's been hived off to the applied mechanics department. But we have a current 2-year MTech program in bioprocess engineering with an intake of 15 per year, so about 30 MTech students. So this is in terms of numbers. Okay, in terms of the areas, what we focus on, we have about 40% of the faculty in biological sciences, okay, primarily in the area of biomedical sciences. In 4 sub areas, we have people working in the area of cancer. There are about 4 people. 3 or 4 people working in the area of cardiovascular biology, infectious diseases, and we have also just recruited some faculty in the area of neuroscience. And then we have a couple of faculty who are doing more fundamental research in genetics and development biology using well-known model organisms, C. elegans or Arabidopsis, which I talked about. We have some faculty, about 4 or 5 faculty who work in what we call in the area of biomolecular sciences, right? Doing either structural biology or chemical biology and so on. We have about 8 faculty, roughly about 25% of faculty working in the area of computational biology. And that's pretty spread out. When I say computational biology, it comes in all kinds of colors. Those who do biomolecular dynamics, those who work on systems biology, computational neuroscience, disease modeling, bioinformatics, and so on. So it's pretty much spread. You can see that in our website. And then the 4th area is biological engineering. Again, we have about 35% of faculty in biological engineering, about 13 faculty, in 2 broad sub areas. One in the area of bioprocess engineering, which I also belong, who work in the area of metabolic engineering, plant cell culture, process control, and so on. And then another 3 or 4 faculty who work in the area of biomaterials and tissue engineering. Okay, so the biological engineering group, and there is an overlap with the computational group also there. So the computational plus biological engineering group is about half, and I would say the biological sciences and biomolecular sciences is another half, to tell you roughly. So, all of these faculty have come from, well-established, backgrounds. Their PhDs were in premier institutes or postdocs were in premier institutes. We usually hire faculty with at least 2 to 3 year postdoc experience. In some cases, extreme cases, we can also relax that, right? So depending on that relaxation, they can be hired in grade 2 or grade 1. Those are all semantics, don't worry about it. But we normally want a 2 to 3 year postdoc, right? And in terms of publications, we would expect that people have not so much in numbers as much as in quality, right? So one quality metric we really look at is whether you have certain number of publications in quartile 1 journals, right? As a first or a corresponding author, right? On the average, as a thumb rule, I would say 1 paper per year over the last 3-4 years in a quartile 1 journal as the first author, right? In biosciences, we know that sometimes you get publication as a part of a large team, and sometimes that your contribution may not be really emphatic, you may be middle author and so on. So we really look at first author and quartile 1, preferably top 10%. So if you have that, and if you have consistent recent publication over the last 3-4 years, then certainly your candidature is pretty strong. And then we would want to advertise, obviously, in these 4 areas. We are not looking to expand into too many areas, but primarily we will look at people in the area of biological engineering, computational biology, and these few areas of biological sciences. So as I said, we go through a process where we could do a pre-screening. If there are faculty who write to us, we'll call them for talks, right? We will look at their credentials. And if there are faculty who are really impressive, we would want to advertise in some of those areas, right? And advertisements are reasonably broad. So faculty, if you have not pre-screened, they apply. And then once they apply and we do a certain shortlisting, we will call a certain set of faculty for a department talk, right? I'm not talking of pre-screening talk, this is post-advertisement. And the talks will be mostly on the research area, about a 40-minute talk, but we also look at teaching capabilities. So there will be a teaching seminar for another 30 minutes, and we look at their ability to teach an undergraduate module or a graduate module. Okay, so we look at that also. And then based on our assessment, the department sends its recommendations to the institute. The institute will set up a peer review committee for each of these candidates. An expert committee is set up, and then we talk with the expert committee, and there is an institute committee also in between. And we look at the overall credentials in terms of the publication, the candidate's teaching statement, research statement, the recommendation letters, and so on and so forth. And based on all these metrics, we decide to call certain candidates for the final interview, which is again a two-stage interview, which involves a peer, the expert committee. And these expert committee are external experts from other institutes in those areas. And the candidate makes a presentation before them as well as the department faculty. And then that is followed up with a separate meeting, one-on-one with the expert committee and the director and certain members from our board of governors and so on, and the head of the department, right? That's a much more selective one-on-one interview. And then based on if the candidate is recommended by these committees, the selection is made then and there, and the candidate is informed, usually by the head of department immediately, provided there is no other controversy or court case. But if not, then a formal letter will go out within 2 weeks. Once the candidate joins, of course, I wanted to write this a lot more, but I'll quickly go through it. As I said, somebody asked about what are the incentives, what are they given in terms of research infrastructure. They are assigned an independent lab, right? It can be complete shell that they can build up on their own, which is about 800 to 1,000 square feet. They are given a substantial seed grant and infrastructure grant to a tune of about 50 lakhs for a 3-year period. Other than that, they are given research students, at least one per year on a priority basis. So if you look at the student research funding which comes from the institute, plus the seed grant, plus the infrastructure grant, etc., it all over a 3-year period, it runs to close to $100,000, which is reasonably good. It's among the best in the country, right? We don't load them too much with teaching load. In fact, the first semester they are here, they're not asked to teach at all. They focus on setting up their lab, writing up the research proposals, and it's very easy to get initial funding from DBT or DST. A lot of them have come and written Welcome Trust grants and got funding, right? Many have come with the Ramalinga Swami fellowships, and that gives them 5-year funding. So funding, we don't see as a big issue. Most of them get substantial funding initially. It's only later on it actually starts to become much more competitive when you're not given freebies. So you get substantial time to focus on your research because you're not overloaded with courses. Typically, the course teaching load is 1 course per semester. Okay, so not too much. And in fact, the first semester you're not given teaching. You are given residential accommodation as soon as you get in, right? And sometimes, if there is a queue, etc., you may be given a guest house accommodation for a couple of months. That's the worst. But you get accommodation pretty fast, and a lot of campus amenities which will allow people to live comfortably without even going out. In fact, people don't go out for months except to fill petrol in their vehicles. So you have schools inside for your kids. You have a superb creche, right? You have an excellent hospital. You have all the amenities in terms of shopping facilities and other things. Everything that you can wish for. And that's really taken care of.